Julie, thank you for joining me to talk not just about deep tempo, but really to talk about what's happening in cyber these days. And yeah, thank you. I guess the first topic is 2025. You're a proven builder, CISO type. Maybe you give it a little bit of your background, but what are you seeing, and what do you think's on the horizon in 2025?
Sure, Evan. I think that with all of the things that are going on in the world, we're definitely seeing lots of opportunity for impact and change, and in that way, it's exciting. I think that even with all the change and the churn that we can see sometimes in the tech industry and the innovation edge, it's actually a very optimistic and active time in the area, especially of AI and machine learning and deep learning. With all those things come the chance to really make an impact, help elevate the type of work that everyone does at every level, from things that don't require as much skill and analytics to things that are deeper and the true contribution that we can do as human beings. I'm seeing a lot of activity in both the startup world as well as the capital markets for like early stage startups. So I think for that, everyone should take some hope in some of that. So that's one thing I definitely am seeing for 2025.
That's we don't have a script, and if we were, I'm off script, so I'll just pull on that hope.
Yeah, that's why we like it.
Great to hear, because I think I know you've built teams and et cetera. I do worry about burnout in cyber. Yeah. And what do you think's going on there? I mean, you've led teams in cyber. That they never get noticed until really bad things happen? Is it that simple? Or, my favorite is, obviously I blame the tech.
Yeah.
Because prior approaches, were sold top down. They're they're a little bit legacy feeling to me, but what do you think? Let me throw it over to you. Burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a long career doing a lot of incident response, starting at the network and infrastructure level and small startups all the way up to, some of the biggest companies around, both with like Walmart, spent 1 year at Google, and then also most recently was CISO at Roblox. And at that time in infrastructure and security, I've seen a lot of incident response practices from the period when like you're bootstrapping up to the training of different tiers of the workforce, to the ambitions of giving a deeper analysis and a chance for the teams to offload some of the grunt work, which is not a trivial thing. When we're thinking about careers that are often 24/7, that holidays are often a very targeted time for either attacks or for accidents to happen because of the stress and the load on the systems. And trying to help both us as well as our teams, the people that we're bringing up into the industry. I probably loved about 6 or 7 different incident response kind of situations in different companies, different stages. How to build for the marathon versus the sprint, and how to also keep those fast twitch muscles, so to speak, really primed and ready to go, because you have to do both. And I think the promise for all of us was always around automation. The part that we loved about computing was finding those subtleties and complexities that let us simplify things and automate to get rid of things that would otherwise require blanketing coverage at like a tier 1 level, meaning entry level like runbooks, and all of that's the beginning of the automation and like how we're training the systems to do things. So there's an important role for that, but it was never supposed to end at just throwing human bodies and minds at machine scale problems. It was always for the purpose of absorbing what was there, making it intelligent and comprehensible, and then building a better machine so that the people involved could reserve more of their own resources for the hard thinking, the really critical situations, or when you really get all hands on deck. Because as the technology emerges and as adversaries master it, then you get both a higher volume and higher sophistication of an attack. So on the defense and the blue team side, we constantly have to be thinking in terms of upping our game, thinking like an attacker, and knowing when to burst down and knowing when to get people off of that high alert sort of mode is really important for sustainability of teams. You can't be burning the candle at both ends with 100% of your team all the time and not expect people to either burn out and leave or have more serious kind of health or personal issues, and you're gonna have to rebuild the team at that point anyway, is, the way I would characterize it up to management. You want to build for the long haul, both for your company as well as the individuals. And I think the promise around automation and AI and like better instruments at the, at the dashboard of the cockpit for all of us was that we could execute at a higher level with lower burnout of people.
Yeah. Maybe we could double click a little bit on evaluating, and I'll share a war story, if you will, evaluating, and we were talking about it offline, security solutions. We recently came through a POC with flying colors at the end, with very low, sub 1% false positive rates. And we think it's a little bit hard to quantify that, thanks to the approach of Deep Tempo's deep learning, that we're seeing, or certainly much better able to see sophisticated attacks than prior approaches, which were more heuristic, rules-based, and even earlier gen ML. But at a certain point, we were talking about fractions of a percent, and we had somebody, from the evaluator say, it's got to get lower. And we're like, yeah, I know it's got to get lower. And they're like, it really has to be lower. It's got to be lower. And then I was like, but, we've been looking at your data. Doesn't it seem like at the network level, you guys are running at like a 45% false positive rate, at least, right? And they're like, no, it's higher than that. I'm like, okay, so we need to get sub 1%, but like, no, you're right. You're like 50 times better than what we have today. But it's hard to measure how well things are behaving, and it's also maybe hard to take the leap into a new approach.
Absolutely.
Maybe just however long you want on how do you evaluate, or how does one, evaluate a new solution?
Yeah, the false positive impact cannot be underestimated. I've seen teams get crippled by it in terms of both alert saturation or on-call burden, or sometimes just wasting a lot of the talents of our team just weeding through alerts, whether they're for incident response or vulnerability management. Because those are two huge areas where we're at this maturity curve for security tooling, where there's a lot of stuff out there, but it doesn't always work the way we want it to. And sometimes when it doesn't work the way we want it to, it ends up making it not work at all because, we're just overloaded, right? So it's really important to take that intelligent approach to it. I think kudos to you for helping people keep it in perspective too. I always look at it in terms of better and worse and significance. And, if I were evaluating a tool and saying hey, our current false positive rate is 60 or 70%. If you can get us below 50%, that's threshold one. Now, if you can get us below 10 or 20%, all right, now we're shooting for A's, and therefore, but it is an incremental process, and just seeing that needle move at all is super, super important. I think that, there's a lot of, interesting, potential, especially with, as you said, beyond Gen ML, can we get past the point of, this highly human intensive sort of categorization to things that are more, where we're leaning on the machines more and more, which will require our rolling up our sleeves to do it, to get it to that point. But I think that's the point we're at. For leaders, my short-term sort of, temperature reading on it is false negatives also, because the false positives are painful. The false negatives can kill you, where like there was something important and you missed it, either because there was no instrumentation or there was way too much instrumentation that was buried, right? And so one of the barometers I use in situations is how many true incidents did we proactively detect? And like that meant that not just the tooling got it, but our processes were able to pick them up, you know? So that combination. And if I see a lot of reactivity where like we're getting it way down the pike, or from a customer, or from even our internal partners when we should have known it ourselves, those are metrics I track sometimes within our org, or in my own accounting, to measure our maturity as as a incident response org, because you're not going to have complete 100% data on all of it. So if I can get some signal off of those key things, like what was our proportion of proactive to reactive in the short term, that gives me a decent gauge. In the long term, you really only know after you can account for the history and the years go by to say like, okay, did we truly evade, the subtle and silent attacker that waited for years, Yeah,
It's just double clicking quickly on it. So proactive, that would be something like you notice in recon, and they never got into, I don't know, lateral movement or whatever. Certainly exploitation. Right. Exploitation is something reactive, right? So it's sort of the left side of the MITRE attack.
Yeah, that's right. The left side, the further left that you can get it, right? Like when something came on, the goal for all incident response is that when you get attacked, that it comes in and it's loud, about it. It's shallow. You can't go deep because you have defense and depth, and it's recoverable. You have enough processes and enough segmentation in place that whatever it is that they got into, you're going to be able to capture and cleanse that. And those are the three main goals, in my opinion, and not always in that order. It really depends on, a variety of things on that. But the more that we can get those shallow and early attacks, the better. And even if we get it after the exploit has happened, if we can get it at a decent interval of time, that makes a huge difference as well. Having the difference between detecting an exploited attack that happened, let's say within the hour, versus within 1 day versus a year. Right? Because when you look at like what's the average time for breach detection, you have some outliers, but the average is actually way up there in terms of 9 to 18 months, depending on how who's calculating it. And that is a tremendous amount of time for someone to get visibility, lateral movement, and at that point, all bets are off. Because any softness in your defense and depth infrastructure, you better hope that you have some other gates and alerts along the way, or they could have saturated your whole system or be planted many observation points. So I think that thinking, yes, you want to get it before exploitation, but always earlier the better.
Yeah. Even though we're recording this, I'm taking notes. So thank you. Very timely for a lot that we're doing, and I'm sure that's true broadly in the industry. Obviously, we have a narrow gauge view as a relatively small company, but really interesting. Yeah, and maybe we can close by we don't have to pitch the people, but why deep tempo? I mean, what do you think about this notion of, we call them log LMs, but basically foundation deep learning models? And what are the positives, and what could be concerns, or what would you like to see from us as a company and approach to make sure we achieve our promise?
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciated and drew me into Deep Tempo early on is that you all understood the complexity of the problems and were able to simplify the key area down to being able to analyze data in the way the customer wants, in the places that they want, with the models that they want, being location agnostic about it, as well as potentially more transparent about the models, because that kind of agnosticism demands that transparency. And all of that, I think, is right on target, right on point with what's needed and where the industry is going. We are going to see, as people contend with the load of analyzing large language models, I need something more specific. I need something more accurate. That gets into, okay, let's have a quality specific data source, my data source here, or these 2 or 3 combinations or multiples. The more specificity around the data is going to give more accurate results in the long run. And I think that is a big evaluation concern, like at this stage of AI. Yeah. It's going to open up new R&D areas just by virtue of that ability to target your data, to target what the models are, and to ask more high quality questions and more high quality responses, and like open up, hey, like what if we combine these different sets of data that I didn't think of as being correlated, but we're seeing a correlation here, and now we can go and do something interesting. Whereas in the past, maybe that computation or human analysis time would have been a blocker,
Yep.
The cost efficiency cannot be underestimated, right? Because both in terms of individual companies' ability to, host or move their own data, to worry about governance and data privacy and all those things, there's a lot of costs related to both housing that data as well as managing where it goes and how it's going to be processed. And so I have worked in more than one company where these were very serious concerns, and I am sure that we were not alone. There would be, I would bet that most people working through large amounts of data and data lakes and the LLMs and log LLMs needed are on a scale of maturity. It's not a yes or no question of like, no, we're not doing, or yes, we have it. It's like, oh, we're at about a 3 out of 10, or we're at about a 5 out of 10. And to get to that 7 out of 10 is going to take like 3 times more money than we already put into it. So, being able to do things in a cost efficient way is huge, right? Down to the data centers, the energy, the processing power, all of that.
Yeah.
I'm looking as more conversation around this and more attunement to the models and refinement of people's thinking around it. We're going to get better analysis of it, and also the fear can dissipate. When people start moving along to see how the sausage is actually made and understand it at a high level, that, there's models, there's weights, there's data sources, you should be able to reconstruct a certain range of response. This is what went into it. Some of the fear should start dying down around, like, what are these uncontrolled actions? Does the machine have a mind of its own? Well, not really at this point, and what that means. We have to move from supernatural ideas around like where we think AI might go, which is fascinating and interesting, to the reality on the ground and the problems we're working at today.
So well said. And in a way, it's been my own journey, to be open, right? I got really, what is it, red pilled? I don't know, whatever the pill is. Back in the day, took courses. I took grad level comp sci courses at Stanford, and sort of disabused myself of the science fiction aspects. So, end of the day, there's math, right? And here we go. And but that is it's a journey. And,
that's right.
And then the other thing I would say, it's sort of on an eval, is we're definitely getting users, customers who view us initially often as that defense in depth, right?
Yes.
But our mantra is we have to win the hearts and minds of the actual threat response teams. So will they, what additional context do they need in the model or downstream of the model so that they prioritize looking at our information? It's not enough to be right. We have to be tractable, explainable, adaptable, because the environment just changed. It's changing constantly.
That's right.
And that is, it's human factors engineering as well as the deep learning. And that's part of what I think you've helped us at least be aware of, and helped us set down, on that path to really figuring this out. It's in the end of the day, it's about the humans, who are responsible for keeping their group of humans, their enterprises, their
That's
companies, their countries, for that matter, safe. So.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we sysadmins, you know, who that's the profession I emerged out of, and all that's very near and dear to my heart. But we have been known sometimes for a little snark. And, you know, there is that classic expression of PEBCAC, right? Problem exists between chair and keyboard, when people were trying to talk around the fact that someone had a user error and like needed to be walked up to that situation. But we could also look at it as like the potential for solution also exists between the chair and the keyboard.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Julie, and also for your advice and I think friendship, mentorship, coaching. It's been great. It's one of the best things about starting these companies, as you know, is you get, it's a good excuse to meet interesting, smart, and great people. So seriously, thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
Right back at you guys. Like, you know, this kind of thing gives me hope for what we do.